Good morning. Trust everyone had a beautiful Pesach. We are, of course, in the middle of counting the Omer. That will not be the subject for today. Today we are discussing Parshas Shemini. And the title for today's class is Hurting the Ones We Love. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive on that topic from an article that hopefully will be posted in the transcript. And we'll discuss some of that and, of course, discuss the Parsha in that context. It seems to be a well-known idea that we hurt the ones we love the most. We're going to discuss that in detail. Of course, I'm posing it as a question because part of what I'm asking is, should we be? Why do we? How do we? Okay, this month of classes is sponsored by Ilui Nishmat Leah Bat Abraham, Lissy Galsky, beloved mother, wife, and friend. Your life left a void that will be missed by all that knew you. Because of the holiday, it is the end of the Shloshim for that family, and it's been about a month now. We certainly wish that the neshama of Leah Bat Abraham should have an aliyah, and her family should be comforted among the mourners of Zion and Yerushalayim. This week's class is sponsored in the merit of Refuah Shlema for Yisrael ben Rachel, Meir ben Ruth, Chaim Yitzchak ben Chaya Bracha, and Yidel ben Rachel. So on the topic of hurting the ones we love, I decided to do a little bit of research, and I found an article that I think is very good, but also I think kind of leaves out one of the main points which we'll be discussing today as to why it is true. And this article suggests 8 possible reasons why we hurt the ones we love most. And the research seems to indicate that we are more likely to be aggressive to the ones we know better and love the most versus people that we don't. Direct aggression is mostly exerted towards significant others and siblings, while close friends are most likely to be targets of non-direct aggression, either indirect, such as hurting someone through someone else, or spreading rumors, or destroying property, gossiping, or passive aggression, such as ignoring, withdrawal, stonewalling, silent treatment. I'm sure none of this sounds familiar to any of us. Bottom line is, regardless of whether it is direct or indirect aggression, the fact is that we all hurt the ones we love the most, be it intentionally or unintentionally. So this article, as I mentioned, discusses 8 common reasons why this happens. And through the Parsha, I am going to suggest what I think is actually a much more overarching and profound reason than this article seems to articulate explicitly. Number 1, there's a concept of self-punishment and self-sabotage. We hurt others in order to hurt ourselves. When we hurt someone close to us, we ultimately are hurting ourselves. We know that that pains us, and we tend to do that because of guilt, regret, and shame. And we have a tendency to believe that we are inadequate. So when you believe that you're actually unworthy of love or undeserving to be happy, unlovable, or that you are bound to ruin anything that is good for you, it is likely you will end up acting in ways to confirm these core beliefs that you can't really be happy or don't deserve love. So there's a very big self-sabotaging component coming from a core belief of inadequacy. So that's number 1. The article goes into how to think about this thing and how to address it, but I'm not going to do that. Just want to get the main basic points. Number 2 reason is gaining control as protection or reciprocation. Especially in intimate relationships, we may hurt the other before they hurt us first, so that we have the upper hand in control. Like the famous line, you're not breaking up with me, I'm breaking up with you. Right? Like the idea that we need to get there first as a way of self-protecting. So we want to protect ourselves before we are at the mercy of the other. And somehow this gives us a temporary feeling of empowerment. And bottom line is, it's a dangerous and very hurtful thing that we do. And so therefore, we have to be careful about that. And also, we may be responding sometimes to hurt the other because they hurt us first, and then we want to hurt more. So again, it's another way of gaining control. That's number 2. Number 3, there's something called this trust and safety paradox. The more intimacy, love, and trust is developed between 2 partners, the more freedom you feel to just be yourself. and not censor your words and actions. And so the true colors come out. This is one of the reasons that I personally like to recommend a longer dating period so that the true colors can come out instead of rushing headlong in a quick courting process. But the bottom line is that lack of inhibitions and boundaries make it easier to unintentionally hurt the other person. That's a third reason. Bottom line is feeling safe means trusting that the other will accept us even if we dare to be ourselves fully. That's part of feeling safe. And then in that, we may actually come to hurt the other person. Number 4, there's an attachment style. And basically the idea here is that we get used to how to attach to people. And so we learn to love in familiar ways. And so mostly unconsciously, we strive to reenact our childhood experiences of what love is and how it is expressed. And so if we experienced pain and hurt in our relationships as children, we come to associate that with intimate relationships, and then we tend to recreate that, which is obviously a deep psychological issue that if a person is experiencing that, they need to become very aware of. Number 5 is we want to assert our independence. So instead of feeling controlled or suffocated or, too entrenched in this relationship, we may try to assert independence because intimacy is definitely scary. It means emotionally approaching another individual too closely, even merging with them in a way. And therefore, it can happen that you may unwillingly hurt the other when the emotional distance between you seems a bit too close for your liking. That's number 5. Number 6, there's something called boundary testing. So another reason why we may be acting towards our partner in hurtful ways that can be both conscious and unconscious is because we aim to test the boundaries and see how far we can go before they draw the line. So we're testing how much the other person can, so to speak, tolerate of us. Number 7, idealization and high expectations. So this refers to the idea that the person getting hurt, maybe a person doesn't even want to hurt their partner, but they got hurt anyways. The closer we get to someone emotionally, the more roles we attribute to them in our mind, the higher expectations we have of them, and the more they ultimately mean to us. So we may get hurt by virtue of the fact that we've built up such an importance of the role of the other person in our lives, and therefore we have such high expectations. And when those expectations are not met, they hurt me, right? Which is a very interesting component. And finally, the last one that this article recommends is more time together and displacement. And the idea here is that you may hurt the one that you love most simply because they are the ones that are mostly around. Right? So there's more opportunities, and you're dealing with life as they're around, and that could really end up being a problem. If we have a negative mood, we are more likely to act in ways that match our emotional state, where we get triggered by very innocuous things, and our closest loved ones are there, and therefore they may get in the way of our unhappiness. And finally, displacement means projecting feelings connected to one person or situation onto another person. Basically, if a person had, let's say, a long and frustrating day at work, then goes home and yells to his partner, he's really upset about his job, and he's yelling at his spouse, right? So basically, this person is displacing his anger and frustration onto someone else. And bottom line, hurting the ones that are closer to us is something that happens naturally for many different reasons. And obviously, the way to help ourselves is awareness. And that's the first and absolutely necessary step towards positive change. Understand why it is that we're hurting the other person or why we're feeling hurt, and then try to deal with what the reality is in that context. Okay, so like I mentioned, hopefully you'll get a lot of that in the transcript, but that's very important in general to understand about our relationships, because of course relationships, as we've spoken about so many times, is fundamental to a person's well-being. And the paradox of relationships are so important, and yet we hurt the ones that we love the most. Okay, what does it have to do with our Parsha? So in this week's Parsha, Parshas Shmini, we have the 8th day of the practice and installation of Aharon and his sons into the priesthood. Aharon becomes the high priest on this 8th day, which is technically the first day of the Mishkan, of the sanctuary, the tabernacle that is up and running now under the auspices of Aharon and his children. And it's called the 8th day because there were 7 inaugural days leading up to that, but this is really the main opening day, if you will, of the tabernacle, and Aaron and his sons performing as the priests. Now, the Torah goes on to describe a variety of offerings that Aaron brings on behalf of himself and behalf of the people. And then, very tragically, on this day, despite it being touted as the greatest day in all creation because it was the first day of the tabernacle, it was the first day of these offerings, it was the first day of the Kohanim becoming priests, it was the first day of Hashem resting his presence in the tabernacle. There were many, many firsts on this day, and therefore it gets the title of being the most awesome day of all time. Nonetheless, a major tragedy happens on this day when the Torah records it here in Leviticus and in Vayikra chapter 9, chapter 10, sentence 1, that the 2 sons of Aharon took each one his fire pan, they put fire on it, and they put incense on the fire, and they brought in front of Hashem a strange fire that he did not command them. And then sentence 2, and a fire emerged from in front of Hashem and consumed them, and they died before God. So that's the tragedy of the 2 sons, Nadav and Avihu, who are the 2 sons, elder sons of Aharon. They died. And then the Torah says that Moshe said to Aharon, this is what Hashem said, Bikrovai ekadesh, in my closest ones, I will become sanctified. And in front of the whole nation, I will gain honor. And Aharon was silent. That's sentence 3. So it's a very, very powerful sentence. And the commentaries look to understand what exactly is Moshe telling Aharon here in the literal first moments after the horrible tragedy of his 2 sons who were both preeminent. The Torah itself is calling them the closest ones to Hashem. They tragically died, and Moshe says to Aaron, this is what Hashem said, with my closest ones I will become sanctified, and in front of all the nation I will gain honor, and Aharon is silent. So Rashi explains, and other commentaries learn this way as well, that earlier in the Torah, Hashem said that he will rest his presence and he will become permanently speaking to the Jewish people. He will meet with the Jewish people in the sanctuary. This is back in Parshas Tetzaveh. I'll quote that sentence in a moment. And over there it says that the sanctuary will become sanctified, v'nikdash, it will become sanctified, bichvodi, with my honor. That's what the sentence says, that the tabernacle will become sanctified with my honor. And says Rashi that it doesn't mean it will become sanctified with my honor, it means it will become sanctified with my honored ones. So the fact that the honored ones, the special ones of Hashem, will somehow be involved in giving sanctification to the tabernacle. So says Rashi that Moshe said to Aharon, I thought that when Hashem said that the tabernacle will become sanctified through my honored ones, he meant me or you. I didn't realize that it meant your sons, and they are obviously even greater than me and you. That's Rashi's language. That if Hashem is becoming sanctified through Nadav and Avihu, and they are the ones that are called the honored ones, the special ones of Hashem, so then they, Nadav and Avihu, are greater than me, Moshe, and you, Aharon. That's what Moshe is telling Aharon in these immediate moments following the tragic death of Nadav and Avihu. Now, there's a lot here that needs to be understood, but I think now we can understand why I chose the title, Hurting the Ones We Love the Most, because it seems very clear that what is happening in this sentence is that Moshe is kind of mollifying and also explaining at the same time to Aharon that the reason that Nadav and Avihu died is because this is a way that Hashem becomes sanctified in front of the whole people, through the deaths of the ones that are closest to him, and that is Nadav and Avihu, and they are greater than Moshe and Aharon. Now, the obvious questions. Moshe apparently thought that when Hashem told him this earlier, that the tabernacle will become sanctified through the ones that are special and close to me, he thought that it was going to be either Moshe or Aharon. Now, that's probably not touting or tooting his own horn, because we know that Moshe is the one who went up to Sinai to receive the Torah. And we know Aharon is the one chosen to be the high priest, the Kohen Gadol. So it's not an irrational assumption to think that they are the closest to Hashem. Okay, that makes sense. But what's hard to understand is, why is it necessary for Hashem to become sanctified through his closest ones? I mean, we know, for example, several times in the Torah tells us that Hashem's presence, the cloud of Hashem, the glory of Hashem, reveals itself to the people, and the people see that, and they sing, and they bow down. In fact, the sentence right before that, two sentences right before the episode of the two sons of Aharon taking the strange fire that Hashem did not command them, talks about Moshe and Aharon going to the tent of meeting. They go out, they bless the people, and the glory of Hashem appears to the nation, consumes the offerings that are on the altar. The whole people see, and they sing. They literally burst out rejoicing in song. They're celebrating. So we know that the people can tell if Hashem, so to speak, is present, if Hashem seems to be happy with them. So why is it necessary for this concept that Hashem will become sanctified through the ones that are closest to him? What do we need that? Hashem has other ways of demonstrating his presence being there, and that seems to be what the sanctification of the tabernacle should be about. Number two, why should it come about in such a tragic manner that they should be literally killed? Now, that's obviously, we're not getting into the question today of what they did wrong. We know that there is big discussion on the things that they did improperly. The Torah itself says they brought a fire that was not commanded. Some explain that they went against the teaching of Moshe. They didn't properly ask the law of whether or not they should bring. There's other explanations of what they did wrong. We're not getting into that today. But separate from all that, Moshe is saying that Hashem is becoming sanctified through their deaths. Why does Hashem need to become sanctified through tragedy? It seems to be such a horrible thing that should be the mechanism of sanctifying the presence of Hashem. And related to that is, are we to understand that if it's not Nadav and Avihu dying, then it would be either Moshe or Aharon, which was Moshe's presumption, both of them or one of them dying as a way of sanctifying the presence of Hashem? Is that what we're meant to understand? That when Hashem said, and I will become sanctified through the closest ones, somebody has to die? It has to be either Nadav and Avihu, or both of them, or Moshe and Aharon, or both of them. What are we supposed to understand from this? It seems to be such a devastating concept. That's the only way that Hashem's presence become sanctified in the sanctuary, through horrible tragedy. And if it's not Nadav and Avihu, then it's either Moshe and Aharon or both of them that would die instead. That seems to be extremely difficult, to say the least. So what I'd like to point out is that the sentence that I mentioned we would quote is a sentence in Parshas Tetzaveh. This is the sentence that Rashi is quoting, and the context of this sentence is that here in Parshas Tetzaveh, Hashem is instructing for the first time the daily offerings that were brought from the day that the sanctuary, the Mishkan, was inaugurated here on this first day of Nisan in our Parsha and Parsha Shemini, until the tragedy that it stopped on the 17th of Tammuz, 900 years or so later. So there's this daily offering. And in the paragraph of this daily offering that we mention, many people say it in the daily prayer services every morning, and it talks, this is the Karban Tamid, the offering, the constant offering. And in Parshas Tetzaveh, back in Shemos and Exodus, it talks about the sheep that's brought in the morning and the sheep that's brought in the afternoon. And it says very interestingly, that this is a permanent offering. This is chapter 29 in Exodus, sentence 42. This is a constant burnt offering for all your generations at the entrance of the tent of meeting in front of Hashem, that I will appear to you to there, or that I should say, I'm sorry, I will meet with you there to speak to you there. And then the next sentence says, I will become known there to the Jewish people, and it will become sanctified with my honor. That's the sentence to which Rashi is referring. It will become sanctified with my honor, means through my honored ones. That refers to the deaths of Nadav and Avihu. So my question is, even if Hashem is somehow foreshadowing this concept, that on the day of the inauguration of the tabernacle, it will become sanctified through Hashem's close ones, why is this idea put smack dab in the middle of the discussion of daily offerings? This seems to be a separate concept. We have the fact that Hashem's glory and presence will be resting in the tabernacle, and then we have all the things that are done on a daily basis in the tabernacle. We have the special offerings of the first day, we have the lighting of the menorah, we have the incense, we have these offerings in the morning, the afternoon. There's many things happening. Why is it in the paragraph that talks about the daily offering that over there Hashem lets Moshe know, by the way that the sanctification of Hashem is going to take place is through his special ones, which eventually means through the deaths of Nadav and Avihu. And so what I'd like to suggest is that we need to understand something extremely fundamental about our most intimate relationships. And this is really the point that I think the article did not capture well at all, if at all. And that is, in order for a relationship of intimacy to be real, people need to show up fully, in a genuine way, and vulnerable to the other person. That's the only way a real relationship of intimacy happens, right? Because when we have facades, or we have postures, attitudes that are not bespeaking genuinely who we are, then it can't really be the most intimate of relationships, right? And to this extent, the article said correctly that when we feel safe, we can be most who we are. But the point is, in order to have a real relationship, a person has to be wide open with all their weaknesses and strengths fully bared, open to scrutiny, open and available to communicate and to deal and be involved with the other person. That's what a close relationship is, where nothing is hidden. So Hashem is saying, I am making myself permanently available to you when I come to rest my presence in the sanctuary. And as a reciprocation, so to speak, in that intimacy space, you are bringing a permanent daily offering 2 times a day. And when that dynamic happens, I will be meeting with you and I will be speaking with you, and that is the hallowed intimacy space of the tabernacle. It's you, the Jewish people, are showing up permanently and genuinely. I, Hashem, am showing up permanently and genuinely, with everything vulnerable, open, and fully bared. Now, the reality of such a thing is that if we are not super careful to be mindful and concerned and respectful of who the other person is when they are fully exposed and bared, that's going to be a very hurtful situation. That's the reality, right? So somebody who maybe shows his weaknesses or her weaknesses at home with the family, and people know, whether it's in the realm of, let's say, overeating, or it's in the realm of not always talking the nicest to other people, right? When the guard is down and people are making their obvious habits known to the people that are closest to them because they are in that hallowed intimacy space, if a person is not careful and very sensitive to not hurting the other person and instead respecting the other person despite whatever deficiencies that they have, plus deeply appreciating the proficiencies, right, the qualities of good that the other person has, that is going to feel very hurtful either by being ignoring of the other person or that we're ignored, or by being insensitive and literally stepping on their toes, right? That's what people refer to when they say stepping on. I feel like I'm stepping on the toes. I feel like I have to walk around on eggshells, right? All of that is because people are needing in that very close intimacy space to be supremely mindful and respectful of the other person. That's the reality of a true intimacy space. That's what it is. So Hashem is saying, I'm going to be there in a real way. I'm there. And if I am approached in a way that is not respectful, if I am approached in a way that is careless and not mindful of who I am, then of course it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt me and it's going to hurt you. And if it wouldn't be that way, it wouldn't be a real relationship of intimacy. It just wouldn't be. That wouldn't be genuine. This is not pretend. That's what Hashem is saying. If I'm coming to you to permanently meet with you, to speak with you in the deepest communication possible between Hashem and a human being, and by the way, all prophecy emerged from the Ark in the Holy of Holies. To all prophets, it always came from there. One of the reasons that prophecy is lost after the destruction of the Second Temple, and also went down after the First Temple when the Ark wasn't there. But that's the space of the relationship, and that's where the communication happens. And if it's not thoroughly respected and honored, it's dangerous. That's the bottom line. So there's two ways that Hashem can be sanctified here in the tabernacle. One is through tragedy, because it becomes obvious to everyone God is really there. And if Nadav and Avihu bring a fire that is not commanded, that shows carelessness, that shows a little bit of egocentricity on their part, kind of a narcissistic tendency, thinking about what they want and how they want to connect, instead of understanding how to be mindful and respectful of the other, and maybe ask Moshe Rabbeinu if they should approach, or alternatively do a double check if this is something that they should do. All of these things show that they are not fully disciplined and meticulous in how to approach this intimate space where Hashem is actually genuinely there. That's one way that the sanctification can happen through Hashem's loved ones. Now, it's still the ones that are closest to him, because they are the ones that have the most awareness, and they are the ones that should be the most careful, right? So just like we hurt the ones that we love the most, we should also be respected by the ones that we love the most, and conversely, we should respect them because we know the most about them. We should have the greatest appreciation for them. So it makes sense that it would be through Hashem's special ones. But the other way that it could become that Hashem is sanctified through the ones that he loves is how the Torah here describes in our Parsha. As I mentioned, right before Nadav and Avihu did their activity, it says that Aharon lifted up his hands to the people and he blessed them. Moshe and Aharon went into the tent of meeting, and then they obviously prayed there, and then they came out and they blessed the people. And then the glory of Hashem appears to all the people. It's very clear that Moshe and Aharon are instrumental in landing the presence of Hashem in the sanctuary. And in a sense, Hashem did become sanctified through that. But he also became sanctified in a certain way, in a much more graphic and intense, and therefore way that hit home even stronger, when Nadav and Avihu did their missteps, and they brought an offering with a fire that Hashem did not command them, and therefore that also made everyone aware of the truth of Hashem's genuine presence and vulnerability being expressed by residing in the Mishkan fully. And so therefore Moshe says to Aharon, look, this is what Hashem meant, that the sanctuary will become sanctified through my honor, or through my honored ones, because it will become very clear that Hashem is really genuinely there. And so I think that what we have to remember about the reality of Hashem's presence being available to us is that it comes with tremendous danger. And of course, conversely, it comes with tremendous wisdom in the communication, blessing. We know that wherever Hashem's presence resides brings tremendous blessing to that location. We know that in many ways. This was true before the Beis HaMikdash was built, when the Aron was in someone's house called the Ravna. He had blessing. It's true when Hashem appeared to Avraham in the plains of Mamre. Mamre had tremendous blessing. Wherever Hashem's presence comes to reside, there's tremendous blessing that happens. But if we are not careful and respectful of the presence that is there, it can bring tremendous punishment and suffering, because that's the reality of an intimacy space. And so I would like to extend this concept to not only our personal intimacy relationships and how we deal with each other, and understand what it really means to be in a genuine, vulnerable relationship with our closest people and loved ones, but also when we go to shul. We have to remember that Hashem makes his presence available in the shul, in the Beis Medrash, in the places that we study. Hashem's presence is available to us in these places. And that is an opportunity to gain tremendously from the wisdom that is there. As we've spoken about in the past, it's not only that we go to communicate with Hashem, Hashem comes to communicate with us. And even though we may not feel like we're hearing words of prophecy, bottom line, my humble opinion is that we get inspiration, thoughts pop into our mind. God communicates with us in many ways through our thoughts, through the things that happens to us in our lives, through the opportunities, and even the trials that he puts in front of us. All of this is part of how Hashem communicates with us. But if we're not careful and respectful of what it means to be in his presence, that can be very hurtful to Hashem, which of course can have a very hurtful effect on us as well. The Talmud actually says that Hashem comes ready to daven with us for whenever we call the minyan. Right? In fact, the Talmud says that when this is the simple way to understand the Talmud, that whatever time davening is called for, if there is not a minyan present, Hashem gets angry, because Hashem is there, and where are we? Right? That's how real it is. Something, quote unquote, as simple as going to shul. That's literally how real it is. And so that's an opportunity to receive the blessing, to receive the wisdom, but it's also, God forbid, an opportunity to reject and to show that we're ignoring or not taking so seriously. This is one of the terrible things that happens in relationships. We make time to spend with someone, and then we're busy on our phone, or we're busy with other things, or we miss the meeting, or we're late, or we don't take it as seriously, and that's very hurtful. And it's more hurtful to the people that we have closest to us than to the people that are not closest to us. It's actually more hurtful because there's much more expectation and all the things that this article says. But what we're positing is that because we're much more vulnerable to them, they are much more vulnerable to us. Everything is much more wide open, and therefore everything is much more sensitive and requires that much more respect and care and meticulousness, and ultimately, being, very concerned for the other one's feelings. And so what Moshe is telling Aharon, it must be that this is, if Hashem reacted in this way to Nadav and Avihu, it must be that Hashem was extremely hurt by them. And Hashem could only be extremely hurt by them if they were super close to Hashem, if they were super special to Hashem. That's the only way it'd be possible even for Hashem to be really hurt. It's like, it's only the people that we respect most that can really hurt us. It's just, basically as simple as that. And so I think that that's another level that we need to consider, which is what happens when we go to the shul, what happens when we go to the Beis Medrash. Are we really mindful of being in the presence of Hashem? Are we really being careful about the words that we say when we daven, about the things that we're talking about in shul, ideally not talking in shul, right? Are we aware that we're in the presence of Hashem? And at the end of the day, if we're not, then it's actually, we're doing something very, very hurtful to Hashem. And so even though in the sentences it doesn't say, so clearly, what it is that is hurtful, I think from the fact that the sentence that talks about the sanctification of Hashem is right in the middle of the daily offerings, which show the permanency of the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people. I think it really speaks about this incredible intimacy opportunity of speaking to Hashem, meeting with Hashem, or conversely, God forbid, hurting Hashem. And then I'll just conclude with one last idea, and I'm not going to go too deeply into it, but from many different places we see that a Talmid Chacham, that is a scholar, has a special close bond with Hashem. So for example, we know that one of the ways to fulfill the sentence, the Talmud says, to fulfill the sentence of have awe for Hashem your God, is to have the proper awe and respect for Talmidei Chachamim, for scholars. And over here, the rabbis tell us that when the Torah says that the children of Aharon and Aharon themselves can't do the proper mourning, but the rest of the Jewish people, this is chapter 10, sentence 6, it says, listen, you guys, you can't act like mourners because you have to remain serving as Kohanim. But your brothers, the whole Jewish people, they will cry for the burning that Hashem burned. And from here we learn that the pain of the scholars, of the Torah scholars, that's a pain onto the whole community. And over here, apparently we're learning that when a scholar passes, the whole community mourns, because that's a suffering for the whole community. And I think the reason that that's very connected to the idea that we're discussing is because the Torah that a person learns is a way of internalizing the presence of Hashem. Just like when Moshe came down from Sinai the second time, his face was shining and the people were afraid to approach him, and then he had to wear a veil when he wasn't communicating with Hashem or the people, right? That's a way of saying that the Shekhinah, Hashem's presence, resides inside a Torah scholar. So too, when a Torah scholar has trouble or a Torah scholar dies, that's the presence of Hashem that is suffering. And that needs to be felt by the whole community, because the whole community experiences that presence of Hashem through the Torah scholars. And I think that's what is being referenced here in our Parsha as well. And so then, by extension, we have to supremely care about the people from whom we learn Torah, the people from, and that includes, by the way, the rabbis of the past, because we benefit so much from their writings, obviously the rabbis of the Talmud and the great commentaries throughout the generations, but also in our daily lives. In fact, it's one of the special requirements on the high holidays is to actually see your teacher, because just like we're supposed to go up and be seen and see Hashem in the Holy Temple, so too on the high holidays, we're supposed to gain that sense of respect and presence from our teachers. That's actually a requirement on the holidays, on the high holidays, because that's another way to experience the presence of Hashem. And so therefore also we need to be very mindful of the blessing that can come through that relationship to our teachers and the ones from whom we learn so much Torah, as well as the danger that can come from it by not being properly respectful and mindful and really showing that we appreciate the way that they are making themselves available to us. That's another way to appreciate and gain from the presence of Hashem. So the bottom line is that a real, genuine, intimate relationship requires real showing up, real presence, real availability, and real vulnerability. And in such a hallowed intimacy space, there is tremendous opportunity for blessing and growth and connection and synergy and wisdom. But conversely, there is also a real chance of hurt and devastation and pain and suffering. So it is true that we most often hurt the ones that we love the most because we're the most real with them and they are the most real with us, and therefore it matters the most. So that should not be a reason not to pursue these intimacy relationships, but instead we should pursue them, but with ever growing awareness and care for how we're handling them, for the boundaries, for the proper respect, literally just for the mindfulness of the other. Any questions or comments?
Hey, Keeper. See you next week.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Somebody posted something. Try to get that. Yeah, so somebody's asking, how are we supposed to understand that Hashem can be hurt, right? Obviously, Hashem is beyond being hurt. Yeah, that's certainly a very important question. Philosophically, the answer to that question, and the way my father always explains it, is that Hashem created a reality of a relationship with his world, with human kind, and particularly with the Jewish people, a relationship that is real. And even though it would seem like it's not possible that we, could ever do something toward Hashem, the sentences in the Torah tell us otherwise. For example, Hashem is a jealous God when it comes to idolatry. It's like literally we're cheating, so to speak, on Hashem. So even though, yes, it's true, we can't really, but Hashem wants a real relationship with us, and Hashem created a dynamic of a real relationship with him. It's not that he needs it, but that's the relationship that he created because Hashem wants his reality relationship with us to be genuine. Any other questions or comments? All right. Hope everybody has a super day. I believe my father is, yes, doing a class. That's what I'm thinking. Yes, I'm getting the nod of approval from my mother. Have a super day, everyone.